Hello everybody, my name is Connor, and I am here with another deck profile. I wanted to kind of talk about my Rush Yamato deck, the one that I've been playing on the channel. I really like the Rush aggression that I've been having in a lot of my Yamato builds, but I did also think that a deck profile would be a good time to kind of talk about some other options. And most importantly for me, see what you guys think and see what you guys would change about this deck. So this is one of the first decks I've built myself. I looked up a lot of Yamato builds while we were, thinking about playing Yamato on the channel. And this is what I kind of came up with one night. And I had a really good time with it. I don't think that Rush is super great right now, unfortunately. Or maybe just my deck isn't as great as it could have been. But I did want to talk about my deck and go over what I look to see in my hand, my opening hand, and, some other options that you could put in the deck, and more importantly, see what you guys think, get your guys' feedback on the deck, and yeah, so let's go ahead and hop into it. So we are playing Yamato, of course. She has double attack, always. It's great. I really love that. Her double attack definitely made it significantly easier for me to whittle my opponents down quickly, and that's what I really liked. And then her activate main once per turn. If your opponent has 3 or less life, attach up to 2 Rested Dawn for onto one of your characters. So I did forget about this ability the first 2 games I played my Rush Yamato deck, so that was kind of unfortunate and a little bit of a whoopsies here. But it's super useful, especially because if your first hit, a majority of the time people are going to take that initial hit, so you're just going to get them down. And in this meta, most leaders are 4 life, so you're going to get a double hit, put them down to 2. And even if you swing into a 5-cost leader, if they take the initial hit, they're already down to 3, so instantly that ability comes online. And honestly, the being able to move the Rested Dawn around is super helpful. The first card I have in my list is the EB01 Hiyori. I really like this card. I think it did help me a lot. It was one of the cards that I thought about replacing, and we'll kind of talk about some options if you don't want to run this card. This card, activate main, you can place it in your trash and play out a 5-cost Land of Wano type character other than Hiyori from your hand, then draw 1 card. So it was really nice to get that draw. I'd usually combo this with either Momonosuke or the Rush Yamato down here. Most of this deck is Land of Wano, so you can even combo it with Kikunojo if you wanted, which I don't think is a terrible idea. It's definitely nice to play it a 5-cost, but it's definitely one of the cards that could be replaced. It is a 1k counter, which is super nice. Next card we have is Izo, I believe is how you say it. I'm sorry if it's wrong. You could rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. It's also a 2k counter. It's a great 2k counter. I love having this in my hand as a 2k, but it is available to rest things like most blockers, Borsellino, Rebecca. I'm trying to think of any other blockers, but I feel like a majority of blockers, except for 5-cost Kid, 5-cost Queen, 5-cost Sabo. Those are obviously more than 4, it's 5, as said, but it can rest a majority of the blockers, which is really nice, and that's why I have it out there, so that I can rest blockers and either swing aggressively into them or just swing over them. Next we have the Momonosuke Searcher. I really love this Searcher. It is a 1k, which is super nice. It costs 1, and then you tap another one to search, and this is something that I did get wrong. I'm reading the description right now. Momonosuke is one of the searchers that can grab himself. I know in one of my videos I said he can't, but I am reading the description right now, and as long as it's Wano country type, you can grab it. I assume that also, from my understanding, the Wano country and the Land of Wano is all in the same category. So, of course, if I'm wrong, let me know, but that's how I've been playing it. That's how I see it played. And yeah, so it's a great searcher, especially with this deck where a majority of it is Land of Wano. And honestly, the 1k is super nice. Next, we have the 7-drop Hody Jones. This is in here strictly for the aggression. I want to be able to drop it, tap your 2 blockers, and swing at your face, and hopefully hit your face. This card, I really like this card. It is tricky because you do have to take your top life to play it, which is something that when I was first playing with the deck, I would forget. So a little bit of a bummer there, but if you are, sitting pretty good on life, or if you are thinking you can get lethal, it doesn't matter. Take that life, go for lethal. So you rest up to on play. It has rush, and on play, rest up to 2 of your opponent's characters and or Dawn. So that'll be, I feel, useful against Bonnie. I know that Bonnie has Dawn open and she can rest. You play Hody, you rest her Dawn first. She can't rest anything. Haha. And then put the top of your life cards into your hand. So it's a 7/8, so pretty big body. And then with the Yamato ability, usually by the time you're playing Hody, they are at 3 or less life, so it becomes 10 with Yamato ability, which is nice. Then we have 2 of the 8-cost Katakuri. Katakuri is in here just to basically get rid of big bodies and help cycle some of my bodies back into life if I need them. Yeah, I just felt like I needed something that was another bigger, a bigger body for my enemies to deal with. And there's 2 because that's all I can afford currently is 2 Katakuris. Of course, you could add more. I think you could probably replace them with something else. I know I did think about playing the 9-cost Yamato instead, but I just felt like it was a little passive when I wanted this deck to be more aggressive. Speaking of aggression, we have the Onami. I love Onami. It is, you hate to see it against you, but you love to see it in your hand. First off, the trigger is KO up to one of your opponent's 5 costs or lower, so that's a great trigger. It's got a 1k counter, and it's a 2 cost. On play, give your leader or character banish. So of course, if you're sitting at 5 Dawn, I know a lot of people do this when they're at 3 Dawn, and they could drop Onami and then swing 6 with lead. And depending on what your opponent's hand size looks like, that's definitely an option. I like to try and play Onami when I can put a decent amount of Dawn onto Yamato. Just because then it becomes something where my opponent feels like they have to dump their hand to get out of it. They want their triggers, they want the life, they have to dump their hand. A lot of players will just dump their hand to counter out of a banish attack. Doesn't matter if they have plenty of life, a lot of people I've noticed will just dump their hand. So it's great for, if they don't have any blockers. Of course, if they have blockers, it's a different story. But if they don't have any blockers, just Onami, banish on Yamato, hit them with the double attack banish, and it's a pretty good feeling. Speaking of great feelings, we have the Kikanojo. You will probably never see me not run Kikanojo in a deck. I absolutely love Kikanojo. No counter, which is kind of her downfall, but 4 cost, 6k body on KO. If your opponent's life is 3 or less, place the top card of your deck onto your life. Of course, Yamato, your opponent's going to be at 3 or less, especially with this hyper aggressive build that we're doing here. Yeah, easy. And then trigger, if your opponent's at 3 or less life, play this card. It's such a good card. I love playing this card in any yellow deck. And speaking of cards I love in yellow decks, we have the other Hiyori from OPO6. She's a 2k counter, which is awesome. And for 2 costs, you may put the top or bottom card of your life pile into your hand and put one of your cards from your hand on top of your life. So she's great for putting in Kikanojos, Onamis, Nekomamushis, anything with trigger, reject, even Sky Island, the 0 cost event from Sky Island, you can put in your life. Of course, if you're at 1 life, that's when you put this event in there. You don't do it any other time. But it's really great, and then most of the time, except for maybe against black decks, she'll just stay on the board, which is really great because when you drop the Momonosuke, the 5-drop Momonosuke, who is a 5/6k blocker, And on play, place one of your Wano type characters other than Momonosuke to the top or bottom of the owner's life pile face up. So you can put her on top of your life or on the bottom of your life, and that's like super helpful. I love just putting her on top because I take that hit and I've got another 2k in hand. He could put any Wano character in here except for the Searcher. He can't put the Searcher in there because they're both named Momonosuke, unfortunately. But I haven't really run into an issue where it's like that's the only thing that is on my board. Well, I have, but I haven't really felt like, you know, putting Momonosuke, the Searcher Momonosuke, would help too much. Next, I run 3 of the Nekomamushi. Nekomamushi, I definitely could bump up to 4, especially with, I know you guys can see I have a reject. We'll talk about that when we get there. But Nekomamushi is super good, especially in the Black-Yellow Luffy matchup. Black-Yellow Luffy is going to have these characters that they don't want you to attack in. And if you play Nekomamushi, put 2 Dawn on with, you know, either out of your Dawn pile or with the Yamato ability, you're swinging into those characters that they don't want you to swing at. So I really like Nekomamushi. I think I personally undervalue him a lot. He's definitely, you know, attacking opponents' active characters. That's massive. That's really nice. So yeah, I definitely could bump him up to 4, and he's a 1k, which is super nice. So, and again, a trigger, if your opponent has 3 or less life cards, play this card. When you're playing Yamato, if your opponent doesn't have 3 or less life cards, you're playing wrong. Next, we have the 7-cost Ace, and on play, if you have 2 or less life, this character gains Rush. He's a 5/7, and the way that I've been playing this deck is kind of like, depending on the board state, obviously, and what you know about your opponent's deck, taking life until you get to 2. Like, 2 is when I start to kind of guard out more, but initially I just kind of take life because then I can drop this Ace. Usually I feel like I've had Ace in my starting hand every time I play this deck. So yeah, just have Ace, take the life till it's 2, and then, you know, you get a 7k swing, 9k if you move the 2 Dawn onto him. So super nice option, I think, and I just really like this card. It's another one of those cards that I'd like to continue to play in most yellow decks. He is a Whitebeard's pirate, which kind of sucks. I wish he was Land of Wano, but he's not, so he can't be, you know, Momonosuke or anything like that, unfortunately. Next is this card. I feel like is a little bit of like a, I don't want to call it a sleeper. It's a 5/4, which isn't great, but it's Rush, and on play, look at all of your life cards, place 1 card in the top of your deck, then return your life cards in your desired order. I really like this card in this deck. First off, you know, as I think I mentioned already, it is a 2k, which is super nice, just to be able to have that 2k. And with the Yamato ability, giving 2 Rest at Dawn, it becomes a 6k body. So I like to play it when I'm at like about 3 life. You know, I take my life, look at it, put what I want to draw next on top of my life, or on top of my deck, excuse me, and then organize the life the way I want, and then just attach the Dawn and swing. The Rush is super helpful. Of course, if you don't have the Rusted Dawn, it's a 4k body, so there's still a good amount of things it can get rid of, mostly like smaller bodies like Searchers or things like Izo. So it's not like the worst card to play out. It's definitely a very situational card, I feel. But I do like having it in the deck if you know, for nothing but the 2k. I think it's a great 2k, and it's Wano, so it is searchable. Now into the events. We of course have 4 of the 0-cost events. I feel like I'm running a decent amount of 0 or no counter bodies. So 0-cost event, you get to trash 1 card from your hand and get plus 3k. Honestly, it's just nice too, that plus 3k, it helps you get out of more attacks easier. Oh, sorry. So yeah, honestly, it's just, I think it's a staple in almost every yellow deck now is the 0-cost event, because they have so many big bodies that don't have counter. And then because this is an EB01 deck list that I was running, I was like, well, I want to put Reject in. I want to play with the Reject before Reject gets banned. Reject will be banned in OP07, but I will talk about a couple of different like cards you can put in instead of Reject. We've got a couple of options, so I really like Reject. I only run 2. Your hair's getting everywhere. I really like Reject. I only run 2, and that felt pretty good. I feel like I was seeing my Rejects a lot, actually. So Reject, you can KO, and I mainly use Reject for the first option, which is KO one of your opponent's 5 cost or lower characters. And then the second option is if your opponent's at low on life, deal 1 damage to them, then add the top card of your life to your hand. So it's good for like the kill shot, or if my opponent is an RP law and all he has is a a 5 cost blocker, or even like a 4 cost blocker, I'm gonna pop that thing, get it out of here, and we're rushing in. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good option. Of course, it is getting banned. It is just pretty strong, unfortunately. It's actually stupid strong, but and I do agree with that ban. But yeah, I figured this was gonna be one of the last like strictly EB01 decks that I ran. So I wanted to include it. Alright, so I wanted to talk about what I personally look for in my opening hand when I'm playing Yamato. I look for ISO. I just think that they're a really strong card early game. It's a 3 cost, which a lot of black decks specifically can pop early. But if you can rest any like blocker they play and swing into it, get it off the board quickly, I think that that's worth it. And worst case scenario, it is a 2k counter, so I definitely look for that. Mostly because of the 2k, but I just think it's a strong card to have in your opening hand. Along with Momonosuke, it's a searcher. I mean, I feel like any deck where you play searchers, you want the searcher in your opening hand, so you can just instantly start looking for the cards that you really, really need. I also really like to have Hody in my opening hand. That kind of gives me a better idea of how aggressive I'm going to be playing this match. Like if I, know that, okay, 7 on turn, I want them to be low. I want them to be able to, be in the kill range. Like having Hody in my hand kind of lets me know that, okay, yeah, around 7 dawn, if they're low enough, we start aggressive, we see where we go, type of deal. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. I also look for Onami in my starting hand. Worst case scenario, 1k trigger. Best case scenario, banish double attack Yamato. That is, people hate that. People get so tilted. I've literally had people quit on the sim because of it. So I just think it's a really just disgusting combination. And I mean, why not use it? Next, I have Hiyori. Hiyori, I just think is a really solid card to have in your hand at any point in the game, really. But if I have Hiyori in my opening hand, along with something that has trigger, I'm definitely like tempted to keep that, especially like Nekomamushi, or even Onami. If I think that they're gonna be playing a 5 cost that I am gonna have trouble getting rid of, I'll put Onami in life using Hiyori, and then use her trigger to KO. Their blocker or what have you, unless it's a Sabo. I've definitely had that happen where I put Onami in my life and then they Sabo, and so now I'm in this awkward position where either I have to guard out so bad to try and get Onami to stay in life until the next turn when Sabo ability's gone, or just look like a fool and just take my card, so that can happen. But as I said, worst case scenario, she's a 1k, and worst case scenario, Hiyori's a 2k, so it's good to have counter early game. Next, I look for the Momonosuke blocker. It's the only blocker I run in this deck, because I want aggression. I didn't want to put a lot of blockers in, and the Momonosuke Hiyori combo is absolutely my favorite combo to do in this game, I think. Sure, like the Kikinojo and Nekomamushi combo is also really good, but just being able to first recycle Hiyori with this Momonosuke is I just think it's so good. And either you have the option of, putting her in life and then playing her out as a 2K, or playing her out again. And the 5/6, it's a pretty big body to get over. The 5 cost, I mean, sure, black can have, if they have Ice Age, they have an easy time dealing with it, and black can have an easy time dealing with it, but a lot of the times, like, things like Law, they're going to need a Gordon, they're going to need a Raise Max, they're going to need one of those two to bottom deck it, or two, like, Otamas, they're going to need to put a lot, either, one of their bigger cards or a lot of resources into bottom decking it. And honestly, if they bottom deck it and you have other stuff on the board, that's fine with me. Next, I like to have Nekomamushi on board. It's almost for, like, certain matchups. It's not every match I'm like, oh, where's Nekomamushi? Because getting him on board early kind of presents this, if you play something and I don't want it on the board, I am swinging into it. I'm swinging into it. If you play Sabo, I'm gonna go at Sabo, things like that. Just this heightened aggression, if you will. I like having him in hand. Worst case scenario, as I said, 1K counter. Best case scenario, you get to play him, you swing big, and then you Momonos get him back to your life. That is the best case scenario. I also like to have the Rush Yamato in my hand, especially in the beginning. If my hand's kind of bricked, or I'm having trouble getting any pressure, I feel like Rush Yamato is nice because, if you're not playing things on board, you're swinging all of your Dawn with Yamato, so they're gonna be low, so you're gonna be able to move your Dawn. So Rush Yamato, rearrange your life. I know one of the games I played, I was able to put the 0 cost event at the bottom. It was like second from the bottom. I moved it to the bottom, and then get a 6K swing in either at life or, even at a body on board. And worst case scenario, it's a lovely 2K. If I have a lot of no counter bodies, I like to have the 0 cost event in my hand. If I have the 0 cost event and Hiyori in my hand, I do like to try, and if they're starting out really aggressive and I'm not having much luck finding, much else, I will try and hold on to it. It doesn't work most of the time, but just to have the Hiyori and the 0 cost event. But early game, the plus 3K it can be really useful to get out of some nasty hits. And last thing I like to have in my opening hand is a reject. It's not a must-have, but I like to see it in my opening hand because if they do play a blocker that's not Sabo, it's gone next turn. They wasted 5 Dawn, 4 Dawn, it's gone. I pop it instantly, and I'm just swinging at face. Like, nothing can stop this aggression. Alright, and lastly, I did want to go over some options that you could put in your deck, or that I would consider putting in my deck. Of course, you can put anything you want in your deck. That's the beauty of the One Piece trading card game. You can build whatever deck you want. But I put Kikunoja, or Okiku, excuse me. I put Okiku. There's a chance she'll get popped before you really get to use her, which is why I thought about playing her, but I decided against it. It is ×1 Dawn, 1 attacking once per turn, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So it's like, she's like Izo, except no counter, and you have to invest a Dawn in her. Granted, if you invest 2 Dawn into her with Yamato ability, that's pretty easy, but it isn't when attacking, and so a lot of people will just go ahead and get rid of her quickly. So that's why part of the reason I decided not to run her, but it is an option, and it does rest 5 costs, which is nice. We have Cat Viper here, which I think is Nekomamushi, but we won't talk about that. It's a 2 cost 3000 body, OP01, so probably a little bit harder to find unless you've been around since OP01, you lucky bastard. And on play, rest one of your opponent's characters with cost 3 or less. It's like Okiku, but it's cheap. It's like a cheaper Okiku, but I don't think it's as good as Okiku, but it is an option. I don't feel like there's a ton of characters that are cost 3 or less. That's at least my experience running into, or when I was playing this deck, but it's an option, so I wanted to include it and kind of just put it in there, you know? So this was something I didn't think about until I started making this video, was the double attack banish Yamato. If you have double attack Yamato, double attack banish Yamato, that's a lot of pressure that you're applying on your opponent. Of course, this card is pretty expensive right now, so if you don't have them, that's understandable. It's a 5-cost, 5,000 power, treated as Odin, double attack banish. Worst case scenario, it is the 1k counter. So this is a little bit of a different choice. I know that when discussing my deck with my friend Gecko, he mentioned when he was saying that he didn't like the, Hiyori, the green Hiyori, and I was like, well, what would you replace it with? He said, because, you know, your deck is so aggressive, Sugar. On play, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost 4 or less. So 2 cost, get them rested. I don't think it's a bad option to add in your deck. Of course, I don't want to say it's nerfed. It's not as good in like a Yamato deck because it benefits from a Don Quixote Pirates, which obviously Yamato is not, and it's not searchable. So if you do see it in the search, you will whiff that search, unfortunately, or you can't grab it, which is a bummer. But it's an option, and I like the option it presents. You know, it's the 2-cost rest 4k or rest of 4 cost. So wanted to include it. Helps with the hyper aggression. Figured it was worth mentioning. Speaking of hyper aggression, of course, Anel, Rush Anel, 7-cost Anel. He's sticky, which makes him a pain in the ass. In my original build, I did have this Rush Anel, and I had the did someone say Kami or did someone say God card, which lets you play him from trash for 4. I really like that. I should have put that card in here too. I really like that combination. I think it's a really solid combination. Definitely, I would consider adding an L in to this deck just because he is very sticky to get rid of. But, you know, he's Russian. If this character were to be removed from the field, you may trash the top of your life instead. If character Monkey D. Luffy is on field, this effect may not be activated. So, pretty annoying card. I don't feel like there's a lot of decks that play Monkey D. Luffy cards, except maybe like Sabo, and Luffy, Black Yellow Luffy. But like Gecko, like I'm trying to think of the cards I see a lot in my local meta, which is Law, Gecko. I don't think Law plays the Rush. I don't think most Laws play Rush. No, because it's a 5-cost, the Rush Luffy. So thanks for going through that with me, guys. But yeah, it's a decent option, and I wanted to kind of include it in here. Another one that I thought was kind of interesting is this Charlotte Katakuri from the starter deck 7. On play, look at up to 1 life card from the top of your life or your opponent's life area and put it either the top or bottom life area. Then if you have less life cards than your opponent, this character gains a rush. So I thought it would be an interesting option. It is a 4/6. Of course, you make it an 8 with Yamato ability, and you get to look at your life or your opponent's life. Definitely something I would consider putting into Yamato because it's a cheaper rush card that is pretty aggressive. Of course, the lack of counter really I feel hurts it in this situation, but I do think that if I play this deck again, I might throw those in for fun. Of course, it's Big Mom Pirates, so it's not searchable, which is kind of a bummer, but what can you do, you know? Another option is the Newgate. Newgate is very similar to that 2k Yamato. It is a 1k, it's a 6/7, and you do the same thing that 4-cost Yamato does. You just don't have rush, but it is a big body, and the big body might be helpful later in the game. So I thought that I would probably run one or the other. I wouldn't run both Newgate and Yamato personally. Of course, as mentioned, One Piece trading card game, you can do whatever your funky little heart desires, but this is just my thoughts and things on this deck. And of course, I'm still very new to deck building, so of course, if you guys disagree, agree, whatever, leave the comments down below. I do read every comment. But yeah, I like this card. I know I ran it in Katakuri. I think it's a really solid card, honestly. Like, I really like the effect of being able to rearrange my life. I think it's a little busted. And last but not least, this card. I like this card a lot. I use it in almost every yellow deck I have. It's the Arrow, not Nakabaru Arrow. If you have 2 or less life cards in your life area, give up to one of your opponent's leaders or characters minus 3,000 power during this turn. That saves you from a lot of hits. Makes it so they swing, 3 into 5 instead of 6 into 5. So it's really helpful, and the trigger is really nice. You may trash 2 cards from your hand. You may place up to 1 card from the top of your deck at the top of your life area. I think it's a great card. I really like it. I think it's a really good counter card. I feel like I would put these in for reject during OPO7. And I just thought of another one. You guys know where my brain is going, probably. Yep, Amaru. Amaru would be another great option for this deck. I don't know why I didn't think of it. If your life is 1 card or less, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4, and then even if it's not, up to one of your leaders characters gains plus 3,000 power this turn. So that comboed with like a Hody Jones play. Can you even do that? 7, 8, 9, 10. No, you can't. But oh wait, no, you can. 7, 8, 9. Yeah. So you could rest a lot. You could definitely. I think that Amaru is definitely a option. Definitely something that you could consider adding in. And you can buff up, your Yamato. You can buff up your Rush Yamato, your leader Yamato. It's definitely. I think I should have added this into my deck. Honestly, I'll be real. But yeah, that's kind of what I built. Of course, there are lots of other options like. This Yamato. I like this Yamato, 4 cost 6. Rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less on play. So, no rush, but that's helpful. And then, I know I was thinking about playing this Yamato, a 5/7 vanilla. It's not bad. Counter 1k. Definitely was going to play it for the benefit of, the new Hiyori card. But, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of options you can add to this deck. And a lot of things I maybe didn't do, or maybe I know my deck list is not optimal. I know that. I'm not a master deck builder. This is what I played. This is what I came up with. This is what I liked. Of course, I would love feedback from you guys. That's basically the reason I do this, is to, improve myself and get better as a One Piece player. And now that I'm getting a little better, that's right, I've gotten a little better, believe it or not, at the card game, I want to get better at deck building. So your feedback is greatly appreciated. I feel like I did okay with this deck list, but of course, let me know what you guys think down below. But I'll wrap it up here, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys liked this video, hit that like button down below. It helps me out more than you could ever know. Go ahead and subscribe if you are new, and I will see you guys in the next video. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.